I don't know what that was, but I'm just gonna, I don't have sound on my thing, so hopefully that was just like a,
Just a little static. Okay, I think you're good.
Take a look at the BuzzFeed homepage that I displayed before you. Many of you may be familiar with the quizzes, tasty videos, or interactive content that BuzzFeed is famous for. But what you may not be familiar with is that oftentimes you are looking at, watching, or interacting with one huge advertisement. Advertising has become so embedded into our lives that we can no longer distinguish the difference between advertising and editorial content. And this concept is known as native advertising. Native advertising is defined as any material in an online publication that resembles the page's content but is paid for by an advertiser intending to promote their product or service. And this is extremely important because as young adults, we are consistently using the internet and all forms of social media to gather information and knowledge. And this makes us as viewers subject to native advertising or advertising-based journalism. Today I will be explaining to you what native advertising looks like, why advertisers do it, and the reasons that it can be both good and bad. Native advertising aims to appeal to different audiences based on your preferences, interests, or characteristics, but they drive you to click on articles based on its ability to blend in with the content on the website. And these companies embed their advertisements within the content, aiming to sell their product or service. The objective at work here is outlined in an article written in 2018 called Advertising, and states that the goal is to drive millions of viewers to destination pages that appear as journalistic content but are actually advertisements. Let's take a look at the BuzzFeed article again that I showed you before. Upon looking at it, you may be driven to click on a number of different things on the page based on your preferences or interests, but what you may not realize is that the last article that reads, "Can you make it through this Kentucky Derby party?" is actually a native advertisement. The advertisers blend it in with the content, and so we click on it without knowing that that article is actually an advertisement. Matt Carlson commented on the effectiveness of this in a book called The Boundaries of Journalism, published in 2015. He stated that unlike traditional forms of advertising, native advertising aims to deceive people into clicking on content that is akin to journalistic content. So you are directed to an advertisement that looks like this, that is showcasing NBC Sports, trying to get you to watch the Kentucky Derby on their channel. This is extremely effective and drives thousands of viewers to pages like this every day. Sam Del Roe commented on the effectiveness of these ads in an article in 2015 called Balancing Brand Promotion with Compelling Content. He wrote that if the ad stands out, viewers are much less likely to click on it because they will feel that it's disrupting their experience online. And because native advertising makes you feel like you are reading a regular article, it's extremely effective in attracting its viewers. However, there are other forms of native advertising that appear in major news articles and editorials, such as the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And these articles offset the credibility of these news sources. Look at this article that was published in the New York Times on incarcerated women. It reads, "Women Inmates and Why the Male Model Doesn't Work." This article wasn't just entertainment. It was widely read and acknowledged as a piece of editorial content. But what it actually is a Netflix commercial for the show Orange is the New Black. A journalist in an article by Erin Shaustein shared her opinions on native advertising in 2016 during an interview published in a Native Advertising is the New Journalism, saying that there's nothing ethical about a practice that literally goes against the foundation of journalism. And because the foundation of journalism is honesty, many believe that there's nothing truthful about being tricked into clicking on an article that is actually an advertisement. She expands further that although most native advertisements are required to be labeled, like this one, that doesn't take away from their intention to try and pass off as journalism. An article called A Tale of Two Sources in Native Advertising, written in 2016, brings up another concern. Wu Mu and others suggest that the public's susceptibility to these native advertisements lies in our knowledge of the persuasion tactics that are used. And because we don't have that much knowledge of these tactics, we are exploited to advertisements that we think are news sources. On the other hand, many believe that as long as the content presented is relevant and accurate, there's no reason these advertisements should not be incorporated. Andrew Tate argued that people do see the labeled sponsored content and still readily click on these advertisements. This was argued in an article called Why People Are Wrong About Native Advertising in 2017. Tate claimed that because these articles don't require you to abandon the experience that you're having on a website, they allow viewers to flow through the content of information that's displayed, and you don't feel like you have to find your way back from the site that you're currently on. And for this reason, native advertisements don't take away from the expectations that people have on the sites that they're visiting. Amy Mudge reinforced the benefits of native advertising in her article called Native Advertising, Influencers, and Endorsements in 2017. She pointed out that native advertising makes online content way more relevant to consumers and also a lot more interactive. She also brings up the point that as consumers, we are resistant to paying for online content, and native advertising brings in this needed revenue that is needed to keep this information out there for free. And this is really important because we are all consumers, and in turn, we are, whether we like to be or not, we are subject to native advertising. Today, I informed you on what native advertising looks like, why advertisers do it, and the reasons that it can be both good and bad. I hope this helped you formulate your own stance on this issue, and I encourage you all to keep this concept of native advertising in the back of your head the next time you are using social media, and decide for yourselves whether the presence of native advertisements takes away from your experience on these websites and the credibility of the sources that you use. Thank you.